Hello and welcome to episode 11 of the Legacy Den podcast. I am one of your co-hosts, Mason Losh, and with me as always is Rob. How you doing today, Rob?
I'm doing good. It's the weekend. We usually record on a weeknight, so I'm feeling good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fantastic.
You look like you're pouring something out there. What are you drinking tonight?
I'm drinking some whiskey because on the weekends, that's what I like to drink.
Well, looks good. You got the nice whiskey glass too.
So what do we got on the agenda today, Rob?
Well, first, I'm drinking.
Oh, excuse me. What are you drinking today, Rob?
It's I don't know how to pronounce this. Goser. Gooser. It's from
Gooser.
Austria. It's Austria's finest beer, apparently. It's on the bottle, and the bottle does not lie. So I'm looking forward to drinking that while chatting about Magic. But on the agenda, you guys know MTGO has leagues. Magic the Gathering Online has leagues, and after a week or so, they post a number of lists that went 5-0 in one of their leagues. And one of my friends, a buddy of mine named Phil, he has a lands list that went 5-0, and it's posted on their 2019 July 6th list. I will link it in the description below. And his lands list is actually quite interesting because it runs quite a few new cards. It runs 3 Ren and 6. It runs 1 Blast Zone. And it runs in the board 2 Force of Vigor. So there's a couple new cards and a couple new interesting pieces of tech that he's talking about. So as someone who went 5-0, I asked him about tips that he has for the deck and kind of what does a lands player think when playing? What are their goals? Because I don't have a Tabernacle. Do you have a Tabernacle, my friend?
No, I have unfortunately missed the boat on Tabernacles.
Yeah, we both missed the boat on Tabernacles. There was a point when I was like, I either buy a Tabernacle now or I don't play lands or any deck with a Tabernacle. That was when it was about $800. I was like, I either buy it now or I'm done. And I chose not to buy it. And now it's up to 2,000 or so, which was,
Considering that you are a happy owner of a set of Power 9, I think you made the right choice.
Yeah, I decided to put my money towards Vintage instead. So,
which is a highly respectable choice.
Yep.
As somebody who has very rarely, I occasionally I will play against lands, and I have always asked for tips about how to play against lands. But typically, when I think about what I'm trying to avoid when I'm playing against lands, the number one thing I'm trying to avoid is to not get comboed out like turn 2. Sometimes they can just have those random stage depths draws that just knocks you out turn 2. The secondary thing that I'm worried about is getting my lands completely destroyed with Port, Wasteland, and Ghost Quarter. And then the final third thing is to just slowly get grinded out with Punishing Fire, Grove, and Life from the Loam returning things and just slowly, grinding me away. So that's typically what's on my mind when I'm playing against lands. What did your friend talk about?
Yeah, actually, it's funny because you have not looked at his list. He says for green-red lands, there's 4 priorities. The first priority is to be a prison deck with Wasteland, Ghost Quarter, Rishadan Port, and Tabernacle. So that's priority 1, is to kind of make sure your opponent can't do anything. The second priority is to use the threat of Merit Lodge at instant speed to kind of control how your opponent can develop their board. He says the third priority is to use Punishing Fire and Grove to control their life total as well as creatures on the board. So those 3 priorities are the exact 3 things that you said you're looking out for. So,
yep.
So if you don't play against lands, again, what you said are the correct tips. Like these are what you should be careful of. And he said priority 4 is to kill the opponent with a 2020, which of course.
Okay, so that's the last thing on your mind.
Yeah, if there's an open window, you just take it and swing.
Sure.
But killing with the 2020 is not the biggest priority. It's the threat that makes them not play optimally, or to play to not do what might actually kill you. You know, they're like, well, okay, do I drop this sorcery speed thing here, or do I hold back in case he does this, or, you know?
Yeah, the interesting thing about lands is that it's a control deck first and foremost, but it just also has the oops, I win moment of just getting the Dark Depths and popping it for Merit Lage. And that Merit Lage, I mean, there are certain decks that will fold to the Merit Lage plan, and then there are certain decks that literally don't care about the Merit Lage plan. Of the wheelhouse of decks that I play normally, Miracles, Stoneblade, and Delver is incredibly weak to the Merit Lage plan because
punishing fire is rough. You have a hard time interacting with all the lands.
Yeah, but like specifically the reason I had my priority set the way I had it is that a Merit Lage in play is pretty much game over, almost right off the top when you're playing a Delver deck. But like, say for example, if you're playing Miracles, then it really doesn't matter at all because Swords to Plowshares and just move on with your day.
Yeah, you're gonna win with Jace if you're gonna beat them.
Yeah.
So it's good that you guys are on the same page. So my buddy, he does have a few achievements in gaming. He has top 8'd a Legacy 6K before. Honestly, this is his first time getting 5-0 with lands, but he's probably went 4-1 like 30 times before finally getting the 5-0. And he's also played some fighting games, and he was a national qualifier for Soul Calibur 3 back in the mid 2000s. So
that's where you know him from, huh?
Yeah, he has a history of game. So yeah, we know each other from fighting games, and we both played Magic. So he kind of goes over a few of the new cards, some of their pros and cons. Let's talk about Blast Zone.
Okay.
So Blast Zone, it's interesting because it's, to me, I'm like, the fact that you can't kill tokens with it is kind of weak, right? But you can copy it with Thespian Stage, and it's set to 0.
All right then, sure.
And then that can also kill things like Chalice and like their engineered explosives or whatever they might have. It can be recurred with Ren and 6 and Life from the Loam, of course. So it's actually kind of better than engineered explosives for lands in a way. Great crop rotation target. Sometimes it's like, well, they're attacking with a couple Delvers and crop rotation, blow it up. And yeah, you can do things like set it to 3. And then if your opponent casts Back to Basics or Blood Moon, they're just like, it's just going to kill them. So I can't cast it right now. I have to have something that makes him explode the Blast Zone first, and then I can play my spell again. So that can actually quite delay you getting locked out from a card like Blood Moon or Back to Basics. One of the I guess you can still lock them out with the Blood Moon, of course. One of the cons is that it's slow because you have to pay 2 mana to put 1 counter on it, 4 for 2 counters, whatever, and then 3 mana, and you have to sack it to explode. So it really does take a lot of resources. It can get wastelanded before you're able to really do anything, and it's a difficult card to use correctly. You have to know the opponent's decks and know their threats. And again, not being able to be from 0 is kind of a weak point, especially against all things like Chalice.
Yeah.
So he plays 2 copies of Force of Vigor. That's the green force in the board. So what do you think about Force of Vigor as a card?
I I have not been thinking about Force of Vigor very much. To be quite honest, a heck of a lot of the Modern Horizon cards I've just been sort of staying away from, simply because I don't know what I'm going to need. I have no idea where the Legacy meta is going to fall.
Well, okay.
I've
You're a Miracles player, so if you're playing against lands, like knowing Force of Vigor is there, like I don't know. Like
yeah, I can see it being like a potential like game changer against like counterbalance, stuff like that. Frankly, I've wanted a card like Force of Vigor for Chalice of the Void. The one thing I think that I don't like about it is the fact that it's hard cast at 4. I really kind of wanted it to be like hard castable at like 3. I think that would make it a little bit more, something that everybody would want to play. But despite that fact, like I didn't dismiss it. I knew that like Dredge and various other decks that absolutely need to remove like Leyline of the Void or various other like pre-game effects would want it.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah. It's always been a card that I've been thinking about, but it's not something that I necessarily have been chomping at the bit to go and buy.
I think you're definitely right about the casting cost. If you can't pitch a card or anything, then green 2 is really really clunky. It's weird. Yeah. It's not as easy to cast as like a Frozen Grip or a Disenchant or whatever. And again,
K-Grip is 2 and a green, isn't it?
Yeah, 2 and a green, and it has split second, so that's also an advantage. Especially if you're playing against Miracles and all they have to do is protect their back to basics and they win. It's like,
but when you're talking about Force of Vigor, though, did you want me to like analyze it from the perspective of adding it to the lands deck, though?
No, just playing against it, like knowing it's there.
So having it from my land, having it come from my
knowing
land.
The threat of it is there. Do you think that makes lands like more scary, or would you rather them have that over Frozen Grip or something?
For all of the decks I play, like I play Miracles and Delver and sometimes like Grixis Control and stuff like that. Stoneblade. I really wouldn't. I don't think it's very much of an upgrade over K-Grip. Like whatever it's doing, it's going to get something, but hopefully that one thing is going to be a minor part of the deck. I could see it. I could see back to basics, like losing to back to basics, but I guess like versus K-Grip, like I would prefer to be able to force it than not be able to force it. So I guess I'd still think that K-Grip is better.
Okay, yeah. So K-Grip, when you're running counters, can be scarier. That's true. But it does have some pros though. Lands does play a lot of green spells, so it's easy to pitch, especially if it's mid game and you have a second exploration. It's like I don't really need another exploration, or like more than one life from the loam. Same thing. Apparently against Storm decks, they do play LEDs and Lotus Petals really early because they want to avoid Sphere of Resistance. So it can just take those out pretty early. Yeah, apparently it's great in some matchups that are difficult, like Death and Taxes, Chalice Moon decks, 4-color Loams, Miracles, Sneak and Show, things like that. Even the Mirror, it can help. Your opponent sets up Mox Diamond, Exploration and stuff, and you just Vigor and just kill them both. That can be pretty devastating, actually.
Yeah. I guess from the Fair Blue deck perspective, like I'm happy to see them run Force of Vigor over K-Grip because it's more effective for them against some of their worst matchups, i.e., turn 1 Chalice decks, turn 1 Blood Moon decks, but it's not as good against the Fair Blue decks because we can counterspell it.
Yeah. So. And one more thing is like when you have your own sideboard Sphere of Resistance, it's easier to be able to pay for that than to actually have another mana to Frozen Grip. So
sure, because you're just paying an extra and then pitching
one,
a
which
green
you probably have anyway. So
yeah.
And again, like but the only times you can pitch are during your opponent's turn. So you can't do like, oh, I drew this thing, I have this great plan, but I can't do it during my turn because.
Yeah.
Like,
I can see what they did for the card though. Now that I'm like reconsidering how the fact that you get two two artifacts or two enchantments or one of each, and you pitch a card, so you're basically two for twoing
yeah.
if you're pitching. And I can see why like they would have to set it at 4 mana because that's an automatic 2 for 1.
Hmm.
But then on the other hand, again, like there's no guarantee that your opponent is going to have two artifacts or two enchantments.
Sometimes it's just gonna kill the one back to basics or something with the
Yeah.
one blood moon. And one more disadvantage is that against Karn decks, because of the Lattice, it turns everything colorless. So if they have Karn, Lattice, you can't pitch Force of Vigor to kill Karn and whatever, because nothing is green then.
Is it pronounced Lattice?
Lattice? I don't know.
Yeah, I thought it
Like
was lattice.
Lattice. Okay.
Mm.
Lattice. It sounds more elegant and
Yeah,
sophisticated.
it sounds a little more French.
Oh.
Oh.
Well,
All right, but
like
we're burying
wine.
the lead here because we're talking about Blast Zone and we talked about Force of Vigor. The lead, of course, is the card that everybody wants to hear about, which is Renin 6.
Okay.
And I want to know how, because it's 3 in the main, right?
3 in the main, yeah.
Yeah. So how is the deck now shifted? How is it now working with 3 main Renin 6?
I mean, Renin 6 is amazing because
It's just good.
I mean, you guys know Mox Diamond decks, discard the Mox Diamond land, cast Renin 6, get the land right back. Because lands doesn't run fetches. I'm pretty sure.
I thought, didn't it run Wooded Foothills or something?
Gonna double check this list. Sorry, it runs 1 Wooded Foothills, 1 Windswept Heath, 1 Verdant Catacombs. Okay, it runs a few fetches. Yeah. Sorry, I was wrong. It runs a few fetches, but it's not a deck that has a fetch almost guaranteed like a lot of the blue decks do.
Yeah, it's not pulling back that fetch every single turn and finding more lands. It's
but because they only do have a few fetches, it's easier for them to just keep getting the fetch back if you're going to do Sylvan Library stuff. And I mean, Renin 6, it gets back cards, and sometimes it's like, oh, they cast a Bob, they cast a Dark Confidant, Renin 6, kill it. And then that stops your opponent from getting a card advantage over you. Again, and it gets back like the Horizon Canopies, the Cycle lands, everything. Gets back Wastelands and Ghost Quarters. It actually apparently makes lands more resilient to Leyline and Surgical Extraction, because if they surgical your life from the loam, generally it's like, oh, I can't get my lands back. But Renin 6 still lets you get lands back. And like Renin 6 also gives you a way to still deal damage to the opponent if they have a Leyline. And the ultimate, again, can win the game on its own.
Well, but the ultimate is also graveyard focused. Like you can't retrace it if, for example, your opponent has a Leyline.
Oh yeah, but that's sorry, but different conversation. But if in a regular situation, if you ultimate, you'll probably just win.
Yeah,
you can just crop rotation,
surgical
crop rotation,
extraction.
crop rotation.
Yeah, the surgical extraction plan definitely makes a lot of sense because one of the key targets is to surgical out life from the loam, and once you've done that, then you're like, okay, my job is done. Like all I have to do is just kind of weather the storm of whatever wastelands he pulls up off the top, But with Renin 6, then you just get blown out because now you're dealing with a mini life from the loam. Yeah. How did they change the core of the deck? Because I would assume that fitting in 3 Renin 6 meant that he had to cut some other cards. Do you notice any noticeable cards that are missing from the deck?
Well, okay. Let me pull up a lands list from before.
I don't suppose they have missing gambles, missing.
There's 2 gambles, 4 loams.
Okay, so it's 2 gambles.
1 Sylvan
So
Library.
they cut 2 gambles for it.
Yeah, they cut 2 gambles and Mana Bond. Mana Bond's no longer there.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So that's about it. because you have 2 gambles and a mana bond. Because again, 3 punishing fire, 4 mox diamond, 1 sylvan.
Yeah,
So,
that sounds about right. Yeah, and I
but
assume
yeah,
like the lands package, they're like still running what, like 3 port, 3 wasteland, 3 ghost quarter.
yep, 3 port, 4 wasteland, 1 ghost quarter apparently is enough. You can crop rotation for it, I guess. And again,
Sure.
ghost quarter isn't great early on. And against some decks, it's pretty much worthless because it doesn't hurt them enough. But
Well, it'll if you're dealing with a deck that only has like a handful of basics, it'll really screw things up when you start hitting the
but
basic.
if it's a deck that only has a handful of basics, Wasteland is just much more important. And then once you Wasteland them enough, and then they start playing their own basics, that's when you can Ghost Quarter them. But you don't want to Ghost Quarter them too early because it gets their basics, and then they're safe against Wasteland for a bit, right? So, but
Yeah.
But yeah, Ren and 6, because like red green can be a little difficult to get on turn 2 because Lance has a lot of colorless mana.
Yes.
So of course, if they get like a god hand with like Mox Diamonds and Explorations and just like ba 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 ba, then yeah, they can get it. But because there's so many colorless lands, they have Ancient Tomb, Blast Zone, Bajuka Bog, Thespian Stage, Ghost Quarters, ports, Tabernacles of land, technically, wastelands. Can be a little difficult for them to get it. So if you don't get Ren in 6 turn 2, each turn after turn 2 you play Ren in 6 is just not as good as if it was played that many turns before, pretty much.
Mm.
So, but yeah, so the matches that he played against, Mono Blue, Karn, so just adding in chokes, trackers, spheres, just a lot of the hate cards. Against Rug Delver, you get rid of a couple loams, you get rid of Caracas, Gambles, you get rid of crop rotations because they counter those, and then you lose a land and a card. And then you just add in chokes, tracker, drops of honey, things like that. Against Ant, you take out things like Maze of Ith, you take out loams, you take out Ren and 6s, Caracas, you take out the punishing fires, you just go all in on the 2020 and trying not to die. And then just adding in the hate cards like Sphere of Resistance, Thorn, and Force, and Chokes.
You try and slow them down, and then you go for the 2020 plan.
Yeah. But pretty much the plan is always side in the 3 trackers. But yeah, so against Miracles, he sided out 7, 9, 10, 12, 13 cards. Side out Maze of Ith. You side out 1 Wasteland. You side out 2 Loams, 2 Gambles, 4 crop rotations. You side out 1 Chasm. You side out Depths. You side out Caracas. You side out Tabernacle. You add in Chokes, Tireless Trackers, Spheres, Thorn, Force of Vigors, and Crows and Grit. So
you bring in the Force of Vigors.
Well, yeah, because you got to get rid of Counterbalance and back to basics and stuff.
Yeah.
And then Chokes, Trackers to kill him. So he said his favorite moment was round 5, game 3. So this is the game that decides whether he gets 5-0 or not against Miracles. So his opponent's at 1 life, and he's like, my opponent probably has a Force of Negation. So he top decks a Thorn of Amethyst, and he's sitting with the Punishing Fire in his hand. So he plays out the Thorn, and the opponent uses a Force of Vigor on that, because if they didn't, they're all tapped out. So either way, they got to get rid of that, and then he Punishing Fires them to the face. But if he did Punishing Fire them, like, oh, well, they're at 1 Punishing Fire, and they Force of Vigor it, Punishing Fire is exiled. So then he would have, they would have maybe been able to actually make the comeback.
Force of Negation, you mean?
Force of Negation, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, Force of Negation.
Yeah, Force of Vigor, Force of Negation. There's too many forces now.
He was able to bait out Force of Negation with the Thorn to make room for the Punishing Fire to kill. So that, and then that's the 5-0 right there. So that was pretty sweet. Miracles is a horrible matchup, but because Force of Negation really helped Miracles a lot. The Exile Clause is rough, especially when he gambles, gets rid of a card, tries to loam, and then there's like negation, and it's gone. And you're like, well, now I'm going to sit here and do nothing for a few turns while they're like counterbalance, whatever, Jace, and you're just like, okay, you got it. And the Storm matchup isn't as bad as it sounds, because you think like lands, how's lands going to beat Storm? Lands just sits there and does nothing for a few turns, while Storm
Tax
just is like,
effects.
yeah, tax effects, and Force of Vigor is really good against the LEDs and the Lotus Petals. Especially
Yeah.
the trick that you did at the GP against the Storm player when you were on, I believe, Miracles, and you had Engineer Explosives on 0, and the guy's like Dark Ritual, and you're like, blow up explosives, and then he was just like, because either he had
Yeah.
to get rid of LED and then discard his hand, or he had to let the 3 mana go. But if he's planning on using the 3 mana with like a tutor or something, or Past in Flames, he's just like, what do I do?
Yeah, that was definitely a tight game because he had just finished an ad nauseum, and I had a EE on 0 that I had been sitting there since like turn 1 of game 3, and so he ad nauseums and he gets his whole hand ready, and then he goes, okay, LED, Lotus Petal. He taps and he does Dark Rit, but he has no more lands up, and so then I just popped it, and he had to choose between sacrificing his LED in response
And
or
losing because he
and
discards
basically
his
just
hand.
dumping his entire 20 card hand or just losing his LEDs, which
I remember
really
he
hurt him.
sat there for like 5 minutes, literally 5 minutes, just being like, "Oh my gosh, what do I do for this one turn?" And you're like, "Judge, come on! Like, can you tell him to hurry the fuck up?"
Yeah.
So, but it's really cool to see the lands deck go 5-0, because right now lands is not super well positioned, but Red in 6 is a big boost to their deck. Obviously, Red in 6 is the best new card for the deck, but Force and Vigor is also quite good apparently. So it's pleasantly surprising to hear, especially because I don't play lands. I'm never going to play lands. It's not the style of deck I want to use. So it's good to kind of see the um see the mindset of a lands player. So.
Yeah, it's definitely some interesting insight. I'm very curious to see how the whole Ren and 6 plan plays out. Mainly because I just assume that so many decks would be so utterly unprepared to deal with a planeswalker out of a lands opponent. All games against lands end up being grindy. And if they have a planeswalker in play that's just slowly ticking up, it's like suddenly I have to grind out the lands player, but I also have this clock now, and if he ultimates, I'm just going to die anyway because he's just going to retrace everything and screw me. Mm-hmm. So like, yeah, it definitely adds a new angle for lands to attack on.
All right, I agree. Okay, so anything else to talk about today?
Well, finance-wise, you kind of kept me from walking over the edge of a cliff. Earlier this week, I had messaged you on Facebook on our chat as to I had found out that my LGS had now dropped the price of war boxes.
Japanese war boxes.
Japanese war boxes, oddly enough. Because we live in Japan, Japanese war boxes are pretty much all they ever get anyway. But they've for the longest time the war boxes have been like sitting at like $180, you know, just randomly being expensive as all heck. And I am planning. Next week. I'm leaving to go to the United States, and so I was thinking about picking up a box and either busting it or bringing it with me and seeing if anybody was interested in it, or just whatever. Because I've been seeing Japanese boxes sell in the United States for quite a lot of money, simply because of the alternate art planeswalkers that everybody seems to be going after. And I told you, hey, my LGS finally dropped the price. It's now actually at a reasonable price now. What do you think? And you were like, no, don't ever bust packs. Don't ever buy packs. They're a trap. Don't ever do it. It's just a waste of your money.
Yeah. If you have a buyer already set, like, hey, you're in Japan, buy me a box of war, I'll pay you $170, and you're like, sure, you bring it over and whatever, that's fine. But if you don't have a buyer and you can't get rid of it in the States, or you get rid of it and you make like no money. You literally get it for what you sold it for. It's not even worth it. And definitely do not open packs. Like, of course, there is a chance you'll get the foil Lil. There's always a chance.
Well, but like even foil Narset, like I'm talking about the Japanese alternate art Narsets are still like $20+ in the United States, and that's not too shabby for
Yeah,
an
there is a
uncommon.
chance you get a foil Lil. There's a chance you get a foil Narset. You can get a foil Karn or foil Teferi. You can also get a foil. See, what's a garbage card from War? War rares.
What's the Vitugazi? The
Awakening of Vitugazi. You can get a foil Awakening of Vitugazi. There
Yeah,
you go.
that stupid card.
You know, and again, and the thing about Japanese boxes is that, yeah, Japanese players like the standard cards in Japanese, but Americans do not like foreign cards. If you're going to America to try to get rid of Japanese cards, everybody's been busting war boxes in Japanese trying to get the alternate art walkers, and they're sitting there with a bunch of garbage like, oh, I have like a Japanese casualties of war, and I have a Japanese Fibblethip or whatever. I have a Japanese something you've never heard of, like what's another bad card? Mizium Tank or something. You know, like you'll get the submarine. What if your foil rare is the submarine? Like the worst card in the set, you know?
No.
It's so not worth it. And yes, you can open a good card. Like you can open like an alternate art Nisa or an alternate art like Ugin or something cool. But still, even those are only like $10 here. And
well, I was looking at the price of singles online for the War of the Spark set, and to be quite honest, there's only like a handful of them that are actually worth anything.
yeah,
Most of them are just worth just garbage. It's There's nothing in the packs, and I'm wondering what do you think the long-term ramifications of this set are, because there are so many unique effects in this set. You have all of these planeswalkers that have basically world enchantment text on them, all of which is one-sided, by the way. And you have all of these newly printed cards that have never been, in circulation before. But like it seems like very few of them are worth more than like $5. Like Blast Zone is a $5 card. Ugin, the new Ugin, which is really, really sweet. He's a 6-mana
$5.
planeswalker that destroys pretty much any, permanent, and he's only $5. The God Eternals are $5. The Elder Spell is like $3. Like there are so many cards that seem like sooner or later they will be, useful, but they're not worth anything.
Yep, exactly. With the money that you could spend on a box, you can actually buy the few useful cards. You can come to the Osaka. You can think of like the money you're going to spend on a box. Come to Osaka, buy a bunch of All-Dark Planeswalkers and stuff, and then bring that to the States, sell those. You'll probably make more money than if you buy a box at home, and you get a trip to Osaka.
Mm.
I mean, there was a store selling alternate art Narsets, just like a big stack of them. They had them for $10 each.
That's not bad.
Right? Like, and stores in Japan, they will sell stuff really cheap if they just have too much stock. Like,
yeah.
They're like, oh yeah, we're buying Narsets for like, $9, but we're selling a bunch of them for $9.50 because we have so much stock of it. Like they will actually do that.
Mm. Well,
And
I just wonder about the whole set, because the boxes are now sitting around. Nobody seems to be interested in the boxes anymore. When they first dropped, everybody was like, just buying them and buying them and ripping them open.
Right?
And then Modern Horizons dropped, and everybody was just like, "Fuck War of the Spark, we're opening this now."
Horizons is great. I love the set.
And now nobody is touching War of the Spark. And to add insult to injury, like a lot of people busted War of the Spark, War of the Spark has been printed it's a print to demand set, and it's currently like it's no longer really being printed, I guess, because M20 is now being printed. But also they printed like all of those foil sheets that like everybody's been talking about, and they've been able to get every single they've been getting multiple copies of them because if like there's just one little tear or one little scratch on it or something like that.
Horribly.
Yeah. Then they're getting another one. There's like people who are getting 4, 5, 6 of these foil sheets.
Each time they get them, there's damage, and it doesn't cost Wizards that much to print it. I'm sure.
Yeah, and so I'm now wondering, like, what is the price? What will the future price of these cards be? Because if there's all of these sheets in the circulation, sooner or later somebody's going to learn how to cut the sheets actually to make sure that the cards are playable.
People have definitely been cutting the sheets. I will say that.
Yeah.
There have been people trying to cut the sheets and sell the cards. But if the sheets are cut perfectly the same as a card, then there's literally no difference between a foil sheet card and a foil regular card. Not even joking. People are like, no, it's different because it's from the sheet. If it's cut exactly the same, there's no difference. It is the exact same as a regular foil Magic card. It doesn't matter if it was cut with somebody's like X-Acto knife or if it was cut in a factory. If it's exactly the same, it's the same, Well,
I'm sure that sooner or later we're gonna, see people who are gonna be playing with foils and
they'll be like all square and stuff.
It's gonna be square, something like that, and the judge is gonna call them out on it and basically just kick them out of the tournament or something like that. And then there's gonna be like a post on MTG Reddit where everybody's just gonna be like, well, what's wrong with these cards? They're from WotC, they're not fakes.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Like I'm just interested to see like where this set's gonna go.
The thing is, War of the Spark isn't the first set that has a bunch of good Eternal playable cards. Look at Eldritch Moon. They've got Emrakul and Little the Last Hope, Spellqueller, Selfless Spirit. They've got quite a few cards. The Cons block, the boxes were never worth that much, despite having fetches at rare, and a foil fetch still probably close to $60-$70.
I don't know. There's very few sets that have had such a huge impact on Legacy and Vintage. Like,
oh yeah, impact on Legacy and impact on Vintage, price wise, I don't even count. I'm going to be honest because there's not enough papers players. Impact on Legacy is a thing. Impact on Modern is a bigger thing. Yeah.
Like I really think that War of the Spark has just cannonballed into the format and splashed everything around.
Oh yeah, not in a great way in my opinion. Like Teferi and Narset are both stupid. Narset especially is dumb. One-sided you can't draw, but it's not on a creature, it's on a planeswalker. And she double as Kantas. She could have 3 loyalty and Kanta once, and she would still be playable in a lot of these decks. The fact that you can use her twice is just like, it's so good for 3 mana. She could have been 4 mana for the same ability, and people might actually run it. War of the Spark was pretty big. Like the recent guild set and Ixalan haven't done much. I will be honest. You're correct there. Dominaria has a couple interesting cards, but nothing crazy for Legacy, whatever. Yeah. Amonkhet and Hour were not great. Kaladesh is.
Oh, Amonkhet and Hour were garbage. Like there's stuff that's EDH playable, and there's stuff that has yet to find a home. Like what is some of the things that people have talked about? All those cycling cards. Sooner or later, there's going to be like a reasonable cycling deck. But that's not now, so nobody cares about those cards.
Yeah, in Battle for Zendikar, Oath was the last set, I guess, that had as big of an impact on the Eternal format as War. And those are also not in a great way, in my opinion.
Well, like, those cards are not worth, like, jack anymore. I've been absolutely amazed at how much, Thought Not Seer. Like, Thought Not Seer, I thought was a solid spec target when it was, like, $10 and it was just kind of creeping up to $12, and then $13. But like now, nobody is running it, and it's just cratered at like $6, $4, I think now. What is the current price of it? Like, nobody is playing that card right now. I'm gonna even look it up because we should know what the prices of that card is.
It's 781 TCG
781. Okay.
TCG mid. Which
okay, so it's kind of creeps back up.
By. Some people go by TCG low when it comes to prices. If you want to go by TCG low, then
well, TCG market price is what we should look at. TCG market price is $6.32. That's what people are buying them at. TCG mid
low
is
at $5.
Yeah, like that's now a $5 card. I know for a fact I could go to my LGS and go buy a Thought Not Seer for $5, like easy. And it blows my mind because that card is stupid good. But nobody seems to be playing with it, so yeah.
Yeah. But War of the Spark definitely. I mean, when they said we're gonna have a set with like 20 planeswalkers, a planeswalker in every pack level planeswalkers, and they're gonna be like crazy and stuff.
Yeah.
I think a lot of people knew something was gonna happen. Something was going to change. Yeah.
Something.
But I mean, it seems like because of the way standard and stuff works, there can be cards that are like good in standard, but also good in eternal formats, and I think that's what they're trying to make. Because really, like if you look at a legacy deck from 5 years ago, a lot of those decks have new cards in them.
Mm.
You look at Dredge from like vintage Dredge, and it hasn't really changed that much. They had like what prized amalgam or whatever. And that's it.
Prized amalgam, yeah.
Amalgam, yeah. And that's it. It's like some decks don't really get that much, and some decks just get a lot of new toys.
Shops gets a new toy every year.
I mean, yeah, Shops just. Is it an artifact that's like 4 mana and it's decent? Oh yeah, then Shops runs it.
Does it hose some part of this deck?
Shops ran freaking Slash Panther. Like, let's be real.
What was the stupid goofy giant boat from Kaladesh that was like it was in Shops decks?
The car?
What was the Heart of Kiran or no? What was it? It's the big goofy
Sky
one.
Sovereign?
Yeah, Sky Sovereign. Like when that card dropped, there was a couple of shop lists that played it just for shits and giggles, and they totally made it work.
People still play Sky Sovereign in Shops, yeah.
Oh, do they?
Yeah, because 3 damage.
To me.
And they also do play the car, like the 5/3 haste. That's automatically a creature on the turn it comes into play. Yeah, they play that, and then they can Mishra's Factory activate it, play it again. The Fleet Wheel Cruiser, yeah. Vintage playable. It's 4 mana for a 5/3 trample haste. When it enters the battlefield, it becomes an artifact creature until end of turn. Crew 2. Vintage playable, my friends.
Hells yeah.
But again, that's more of because Shops is a deck, not because that card is really, really good.
Nah, man. You gotta buy it now. Buy it now. True. FOMO, buddy.
Gotta buy that and all the Sky Sovereigns I see. Yeah.
All the Sky Sovereigns. Just keep them in a vault. Sooner or later, you're gonna be rich.
But yeah, it's like Magic is so weird that some stuff is just really, really good, and some stuff that like seems good is just not. And Magic players are terrible at evaluating cards.
They're just terrible.
Let me tell you this. Magic players are awful at looking at a card and saying that card is going to be amazing or that card is going to be awful. Because people saw Narset from Dragons of Tarkir, and immediately it was like a $50 price tag, and they're like, "This is busted." Like everyone's going to run. This is going to be in every deck. Blue Control is going to take over the world because this Narset is too good, and then nobody was playing it. Is
that why you have 4 foil copies of her?
Because she's cute.
Because she's your girl.
I liked the OG Narset before she became broke.
I liked the new Narset before. I liked her before she.
I liked her before everyone else did. I'm the original Narset lover. Whatever. And then like people are looking at Ren and 6 and they're like, yeah, like it's all right, but 2 mana, it's I don't know, it's not that devastating. It's gonna take so many turns, and like you only get lands back, and people are like, I guess it's all right, but I'd maybe run like 1 or 2 copies or something. And then now it's $100. They're like, I don't know, it'll drop in price to like $15, I guess. I'll wait. I won't pre-order for 20. Because again, Magic players are terrible at evaluating cards. Like you can have a card, they have 3 Magic players. One player's going to be like, that card's amazing. It's going to see play in all the formats. One person's going to be like, that card is bad. Like nobody's going to use it. It's not as good. Like it just loses to like this. And one person's going to be like, it's all right. It might be okay. Might see playing standard, but probably not a ton in legacy. But because again, people are terrible at evaluating cards. I'm straight up. They're terrible at evaluating card power.
Indeed. Yeah, part of everything is that hindsight is always 20/20. Like there's always.
I mean, I'm not gonna sound. I don't want to sound like someone who's like, oh, I know everything, but because I also purposely do not try to evaluate cards when I first see them because I don't know. But there's a few cards I looked at and I'm like, I do not like that. I do not like that card is going to enter the format because that's not good for Magic.
I'm looking at this card. This card is not good for the format.
Teferi is one that I saw. I'm like, that card is not good for Magic.
I'm super happy. I'm happy that I was right enough to like. I pre-ordered those 2 copies, like I said I would, and he's $1 over the price that I pre-ordered him at. So
Teferi's always worth it. And I saw Monastery Mentor, and I was just like, this card is busted.
Why
do the tokens have prowess? It'd be one thing if you just made 1/1 monks. Okay,
yeah.
If Monastery Mentor made 1/1 monks, it would be all right. He makes 1/1 monks that also have prowess. So you sit there and you just go boom, boom, boom. Now you have Mentor and 3 monks, and then you just go, my turn, boom, 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 attack for 16.
Yep.
When it's just like, oh, I have 4 attackers, so every spell I play is 4 damage. Like, are you kidding me?
I really wish I had moved the few extra copies back when he was at $50. He's dropped back down to like 35, which
when he's at $50, it's a lot of it is people panic buying and then sellers just going, oh, people are panicking and buying. Let me just raise the price to what I would be happy to if someone bought them at this price. And then that's when people finally go like $50. Actually, no, I'm not going to buy there. 30, yeah, 50, no. And then that's when it kind of settles back down to 30-ish. But it's really hard to get in that one window. Like there was one day when Dragonstar in Denden Town was buying mentors for $30. Now the bias is down to 23 or something. But I could have gone there with like my binder sheet that I have of like 8 of them and just been like, listen, give you $200.
I honestly, I'm always worried like what will happen, and I always need to listen to that inner part of my voice. It's just like sell into the spike, just always get rid of the cards.
Yeah, and save the 10% for the next guy. That's the that's the way to make yourself feel better, and that's also like the best thing to do. Like I've sold cards and I've been like, oh well, if I held on to it, I could have gotten more money, but I still made money on this card, so I can't be too sad.
Yeah. Still debating about whether or not I should sell my static orbs.
I sold 9.
Oh, did you?
Don't care. I had 2 of them. I got 2 of them in the that every card is 5-cent thing. I also have 2 in Japanese that I'm just sitting on because nobody wants Japanese cards. But at least if I need them, I have them. I don't think I'll need them because I don't play. I'm not gonna build a new EDH deck. But I did get rid of mine, and I don't feel bad about it because I still got enough money where I'm happy, and I made enough money. Like I 100% made money. So, and with that money, I was able to buy Ren in 6s when they were $60 instead of the current price of $100. So, there's also that, and that's what people forget. Like if you sell something and you're like. Because one thing I see people do is like, all right, I'm saving up to buy like this piece of power or this volcanic island or this dual land that I need for my deck. And then it spikes and they're like, oh no, that was the one piece I was missing. And it's just like, Well, yeah, because you're sitting there on all these cards that you could have. That you're like, well, maybe they'll go up in price. If you just got rid of a bunch and just bought the card you needed, then you would have it. Sure, you might not have gotten as much as you could in the future, but the difference between what you would use the money on now, if you get it, and the price it would go to, that's different.
Yep. Always liquidate just so that you have the money, and then you can just buy the next thing that's spiking when you want it.
And that's why stores are really, really happy to get rid of expensive cards. They're like, listen, like even if we give you like $100 discount on a Black Lotus, like $100 is $100. It's pretty big. It's a pretty big number when you think about it. But on a Black Lotus, it's not super big. But they're like,
yeah, they want the cash so that they can buy cards and make more money off of that.
Like if I sell this Black Lotus here at the store for like $7,000, oh sure, someone wants to buy it for $6,850. Sure, fine. I lose $150. But now I have $6,800 that I can just go and buy things. People will buy those things to me, and that gets spread all around the store, and people just keep buying stuff, and then I make way more money because I now have all this extra money. Yeah. So, in some stores, to pay rent.
I need to get my shit together because I bought 7 static orbs off of Big Web right before the spike. They were like 500 yen a piece, and currently Card Kingdom is buying them for $14.
Yeah, and you could wait a bit if you want. I don't know how much they're going to go up. If
they're already starting to drop. Like they peaked at around $28.
Yeah, I think I got
back down to 23.
I think I got rid of mine around 15, maybe a little more, but. I mean, it's not a terrible time to get rid of them. Just get your profit, lock it in.
Yeah.
I've had the problem before where a card has spiked. I've gone to Japan's Denden Town, bought the card, and been like, haha, I have 8 copies of this card that spiked. And then I sit on it because I'm too lazy to buy list it. And then I'm like looking at Card Kingdom, ooh, they're buy listing it for $7 now. Ha ha ha. And then I'm like, I'll buy list it to them next week. And then next week I go to look at buy list and it's back down to $1. Because everyone went, oh, you're buying this crappy card for $7? Yeah, I'm going to sell all of mine. And then now I'm stuck
they
with
have
this
20
card.
copies and nobody's buying them, and they don't need
And
them.
then like I bought them at $1 each, and I could have made $30, $40 profit, but instead I'm like, well, I don't want to lose money, so I just sold them back for $1, and I'm just like, all that effort,
Yep.
And again, that's one of those things that people complain about finance people. So many Magic players think that like, oh yeah, the people who care about finance, they're ruining Magic, and it's like, well, okay. First off, finance people are not ruining Magic, straight up. We are not here to make cards inaccessible. A lot of us are players too, and we are here to get cards so that way we can like either get more money to buy Magic or get the cards so that we don't have to pay an expensive price. And the thing is, if we see a card that we think this card is going to go up and we buy it and then it goes up, people are like, oh my gosh, the finance guys, they bought these cards and they made it spike. It's like, no, actual demand is what's making it spike. Because if there's no actual demand, people wouldn't buy it. Think of the card Eater of Days, the one that removes your library from the game. Do you remember when Jace when Jace, the new Jace was released? People were like, oh my god, library, like it's a laboratory maniac win con. Ooh. They're like, I'm gonna spec on Eater of Days. So that way, when I cast it and remove my library from the game and activate Jace, I win. Turns out nobody.
You're talking about Leveler, not Eater of Days.
The Leveler MTG.
Yeah. Eater of Days is flying
Leveler.
trample. When Eater of Days comes into play, you skip your next 2 turns. It's a 9/8 for 4 mana.
Sorry, that card is also garbage. Sorry, those cards, Eater of Days and Leveler are on the same level of garbage.
Sorry, that card is garbage, but it's a different kind of garbage.
Sorry, I confused these 2 pieces of garbage. This one is a tissue covered in boogers, and this one's a tissue covered in poop. Sorry. Like, they're 2 different kinds of garbage, but they're the same. They're both garbage. So, like, people, that's actually quite funny. People took the Leveler, and they started buying it. All these, like, people are just like, oh, man, these people who think they're finance people, they're like, oh, I'm gonna spec on Leveler and get all of the copies. And then what they do is they're like, yeah, people are gonna buy this. I bought like 15 copies of the Leveler for like $1 each, and then it goes up to $5. Like, yeah, I'm gonna make a ton of money. And on the real finance people, they're like, this card is garbage. I'm gonna sell the ones that I have and just not even go near that. And then what happens is the Leveler goes back down because it's garbage. And people realize that, like, oh, this card is garbage. The card doesn't spike. The card doesn't stay expensive because nobody wants it. It's not the finance people who are making it expensive. It's cards get expensive because people want them.
Yep.
Like Ren and 6 is not expensive because finance people decided to go, let's buy out all the Ren and 6s everywhere. Ren and 6 is expensive because the card is stupid good and everybody wants it. And that's what people who are not into finance don't understand. If a card is solely by finance people becoming expensive, then A, there's not enough copies on the market, and B, it will drop. If there's actual demand for it, then yes, people will buy it.
Yep.
So that's why something like Static Orb, I'm like, I don't know how much actual demand there is for it. So if you're one of those people who are like, oh my God, I need a Static Orb, all these finance people ruined my day, why don't you just wait a bit? And then if people don't actually want it, it'll drop. And if people do want it, well then, like, it's not the finance people. It's everybody who says, oh, I want a copy of that. You know, it's,
Yep. Yeah, a lot of people want to bitch and think that it has to do with finance people buying out the card, but the unfortunate problem is that half of the people buying out the card are players too, who are worried that they're going to that they're just going to miss out, and so they're buying, you know, oh no, I don't need 4 copies, maybe I'll just buy 6 copies, and, you know, maybe I'll sell the extra 2, and then people just get into that fervor, and it just goes on down the line. Check the link I just sent you right now.
Oh, Eater of Days is $2. Wow.
Yeah, scroll down.
Which one? This is a card that no one will think about ever. It's true. It shows up on our podcast though. That's about it. I will link both Eater of Days and the Leveler.
Just had to comment. Like, there's no way in hell anybody's ever going to comment or notice that there's comments, and, like, it's just never going to happen.
I didn't notice there were comments on MTG Goldfish.
Oh, you didn't know there were comments on there? There are various
That's
different
great.
cards, like, people will start talking about, and it's just like, this is a card that's a multi-format all-star that everybody's just like, way to note the obvious there, bucko.
Monastery Mentor. This card is great when you play a lot of spells.
When you're playing lots of non-creature spells, you get to make a whole bunch of creatures. Funny how that works.
Man, what a bad card, Eater of Days. I can't think of a situation where I want that. Like, generally, you can think of some situations where it's like, oh, yeah, this is all right. You know, like, I'm like...
You could probably create, like, a card that's like, if you would skip your next turn, instead you get X, you know, and like, that would make this playable, but, like, nobody's ever going to
let me think.
Card.
No.
Yeah.
Card is garbage.
Card is just straight up garbage.
I mean,
all right.
Even one with nothing is worth a few bucks for some.
Why the fuck did that card spike? I don't even understand why anybody.
Finance people.
Finance people. It's the Illuminati. They're in affiliation with the aliens.
$7.87 in paper. Why?
Oh God.
But again, if people want to buy it for that price,
people are stupid. People are like, "Oh, this card is going to see some play." No, it's not. It's never going to see any play. Every single time
that card, every single time there's something that has to do with like a graveyard or like discarding stuff. People are like combos with one with nothing, and it's like nothing combos with one with nothing. There was always a better way to do that. Like Lion's Eye Diamond does that, and you get a Black Lotus for free. Like
seems way better.
Yeah, or like there's just other things like discard. There's other things that can let you discard a card specifically. Discarding your entire hand. Garbage cards, garbage players.
Garbage people. Garbage
people. So
we totally gotta buy this card. It's gonna be awesome.
yeah.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting on 20 copies of Didgeridoo just because fuck it.
Hey man, you must love minotaurs and musical instruments.
Dude, I think about them every night.
Every night.
All right, I think that we should end the podcast there. As I mentioned before, I'm going to be in the United States next week, and I'm going to be there for a couple of weeks. So this might be our last podcast for a little while. I'm going to be really, really busy, so I don't think I'm going to be able to podcast from the United States. But when I get back, we will be able to do another episode of Legacy Den.
For all of our listeners out there.
For all of our handful of listeners. Rob, do you have anything else that you want to talk about or plug before we kick this over?
Nope, I'm good. Just I did make it to top 1,000 in Arena on Mystic last month. So in August, I will play in the tournament on August 17th weekend. Okay. So me and my buddy Alex, we've been Mythic buddies for 3 months in a row. We both reached Mythic, and I got to top 1,000 last month. So this month I can ride easy because it's the same season. So
okay.
So I just want to plug myself, and
you should totally live stream it then. You should totally.
That might actually be something I do. Live stream myself losing and then crying. All right.
Just getting totally mad as fuck. Yeah. Maybe maybe I can Skype call you while you play and we can talk, and I don't know.
That would be fun.
Yeah.
We'll see if we can make it work.
Yeah.
All right. Take care.
Well, until then, sayonara, Rob.
Sayonara, Mason.